Good evening, everyone. My name is Sir Brian Ornanabal, and I'm the second reporter for the Group 1, and my topic is selection of materials. So let's proceed. When we're talking about materials, we're talking about resources, textbooks, perhaps video, audio, or anything that we use in teaching, right? These are the tools or equipment, or probably, let's say, these are the sources or the ideas, information that we're using whenever, for example, we're teaching our students. So when we're talking about selection of materials here, we're talking about really what are the things that we need to consider when we're selecting material or resources that we'll be using in our teaching. So let's talk about it. There we go. So let's talk about first what are materials for. So let's see what's Albright's view about materials. So according to Albright, materials should teach students to learn, and they should be resource books for ideas and activities for instructional learning. So when we're talking about uh, instructional learning and or students to learn, he means really here is that resources should really gives students learning, right? Information, um, valuable lessons. He also states there that they should give teachers rationales for what they do or what's the reason why they should use the resources or the information. From Albright's point of view, textbooks are too inflexible to be used directly as instructional material. So he believes that when we textbook itself really restrain the teachers and the students to be creative, right? To use to use variety of ways and strategies and methodologies to learn a particular lesson. He believes that textbooks are just really direct, meaning it doesn't give you any other more options. Or if it gives you an option, there are really limited options for it. That's what he believes in. Now let's proceed. Now, let's see here what O'Neill's idea. So O'Neill, in contrast, argues that materials may be suitable for students' needs even if they are not designed specifically for them. The textbooks make it possible for students to review and prepare their lessons. The textbooks are efficient in terms of time and money, and the textbooks can and should allow for adaptation and improvisation. So O'Neill's idea about textbook is quite different from Albright's idea. He believes that even if, let's say, it doesn't address the individuality of all the students or majority of the students, it helps them to review and prepare, right? He believes that still students learn from them, from these textbooks, from these resource materials, right? Aside from that, he believes that it saves a lot of time and money, which is sometimes true, right? Sometimes true. When you open your book, for example, you see and you'll notice there that, yeah, there you go, the resource is there, right? Students will learn, students will have the idea, grasp the idea of the lesson, even though, let's say that it really doesn't fit their interests and their needs as well. So that's what O'Neill really believes in. Now, so let's talk about learning materials. So the course books or textbooks has become an almost universal element of ELT. So uh, when we say universal element, it's an integral part of ELT, playing as it does a vital and positive part in the everyday job of teaching and learning of English. So it states here, according to Hutchinson and Torres, that it plays a vital and positive part in teaching and learning. See, course books or textbooks or let's say resources really plays a really big role in teaching process. Is it- Let's try to identify or understand it more. So the plethora of material that continues to be produced unabated bears ample testimony to its perceived importance, not simply as one of the main tools of the trade in the language classroom, but as the visible heart of any ELT program. What do you mean by this? If you notice this one, when you say plethora, meaning a wide variety, right? A lot of choices. So there's a lot of choices, or there's a variety of materials that continues to be produced unabatedly. Bears ample testimony that learning material is actually the tools of trade. When we say tools of trade, meaning it is the things or the materials or the resources where the teacher is using for the students to learn, or it is the main tool for the teaching learning process. Without it, right? Without it, the teaching learning process will have difficulties. Also, the visible, it is actually the visible heart, or something that you can see or touch, right? Let's proceed. So Coningsworth, as cited in Tomlinson, noted that the wealth of published material that is available on the market today makes the selection of the right course books a challenging task, requiring teachers to make informed and appropriate choices when selecting course books and supporting materials. Think about it. Right now, we have wide variety of resources, especially in the internet, right? We can choose we can search for videos, we can search for audios, we can search for text information. Actually, we can actually search for books already in the internet. I mean, literally, when there's an internet, we can actually have a lot of things now, or a lot of resources. And it's good. It's good, right? It's good. The problem about it right now is really choosing the appropriate resources, right? Filtering the resources that really contains the right information, resources that really has the appropriate or address the needs and the interests of the students. Materials today offer packages from language teaching, which include workbooks, teacher's guide, audio and video support, and even call or computer-assisted language learning programs with precise indications of the work, as mentioned in Talmuds. Here, even like what I've said earlier, we have different kinds of resources right now. From workbooks, we also have teacher guides right now, audio, video, and call. Right now, it is quite evident that when we're talking about resources, or choosing resources, or selecting of materials itself, really it's evident that it should be at least a computer-based resource for everyone to easily access it, right? Especially in this pandemic right now. If you think about it, really, if you use books right now, which is possible still, it is quite inconvenient in a way. Well, it depends on your strategy and methodology. But again, if you think about it, it is somehow easier if the materials you'll be using are or can be sent through email or can be accessed through a computer or in the internet. It's safer, right? It's safer. Let's proceed. So the selection of materials involve matching the given materials against the context in which they are going to be used and the needs and interests of the teachers and learners who work within it to find the best possible fit between them. This calls for major strategic decisions based on informed judgment and professional experience, forcing teachers to identify their priorities. Actually, I highlighted this part here because these are the things that we need to consider. Number one is the context, right? Is the learning material or the materials we'll be choosing are really appropriate to the purpose or to the curriculum? Does it really fit to what we want to teach to our student? And then at the same time, aside from the context or matching the given materials against the context on which what we want to teach, we also need to consider really the needs and the interests of the teachers. Will it fit the needs and the interests of the teachers and the students as well, or the learners as well? So we really need to consider these three factors. Does it really uh, address or contain the target learning or target lesson? Aside from that, does it really address the needs of the students and the teacher and the interests as well of the teachers and the student? So again, like what I've said here, or like the indicated type here, term here, identify their priorities, right? So the teachers must identify what is their priority in selecting their material. So as Little John rightly observed, we need to be able to examine the implication that use of set of materials may have for classroom work and thus come to grounded opinions about whether or not the methodology and content of the materials is appropriate for a particular language teaching context. If you think about it, in this statement here by Little John, right? By Little John, thus the learning, or like what I've said earlier, the content of the resource that we'll be choosing, does it really fit to the methodology in the content, right, of the language that we want to teach or to the lesson that we want to teach? There you go. So the selection of materials has come to involve considerable professional, financial, and even political investment, not just by teachers and learners, but other stakeholders as well, such as administrators, educational advisors, education ministries, and state governments, making the task a high-profile one. Actually, this is the reality right now. Teachers and learners really is the what do we call this, the most important part of the learning process. But sometimes choosing learning materials, it really just revolve around the school administration, right? Sometimes when we think about it, the learning materials that we have right now or that we're using right now came from, or it was chosen by the administrators or the school itself. And the question here, or the big challenge here, is this: did they even consider the needs, the interests, and what we want to teach to our students? Right? Is it a big? This is actually a big question. Is the materials that the school or these other factors here, the administrators and other education advisors, really fits the needs and the interests of the students and the teachers as well? So this is actually a question, right? It is also something that we need to think about and consider as well. Now, these important questions, or so we will be asking question right now. So these important questions regarding the relationship between ready-made ELT materials and the teaching and learning process that warrant serious consideration. Some of these have been identified by Bell and Gower. So these are the questions that we may consider, for example, that we should be considering when we're choosing or selecting materials. Number one, given the creativity is to be preserved as an important pedagogical principle, how can we ensure that that course books or textbooks do not take away investment and responsibility from teachers and learners? What do you mean by this? Meaning, um, does the material give opportunity for the teachers and the learners to do what they need to or what they're supposed to do in the teaching learning process? Or does the material really take away that opportunity to the teachers and learners? Or does the material really just there and it really just gives all the information and there's no more teaching learning process that happened? Also, how can one ensure that course books reflect the dynamic and interactive nature of learning process while at the same time maintaining the consistency of the syllabus? There you go. So does the material really gives opportunity for the teachers and the learners to actually explore more in terms of the teaching learning process, do a lot of activities? Does it really gives you opportunities to experience different um, let's say lessons, all right? Or and at the same time it maintains its consistency uh, in terms of the syllables, meaning the competencies that we need to achieve, right? The curriculum, does it really maintain the curriculum content or the target of the curriculum while being dynamic and interactive at the same time? Number three, although it is true that no course books can cater for all the individual needs of all learners all of the time, how can sufficient material be provided so as to meet most needs most of the time and provide enough flexibility to enable teachers to individualize it? What I mean by this, meaning Does does the materials you use address the majority of the learners, right? But at the same time, is it actually flexible, or can you use it as well to those learners that really needs to have an individual uh, strategy or individual approach or individualized approach, right? Because basically, if we will consider everything, right? If there's no such material that will address the whole class, right? But does the material you will use addresses the or address the or addresses the needs of the majority of the whole class or the learners, but at the same time, right, it gives you opportunity, or you can also use it to those students who are not really part of the majority, those who needs some individualized approach. Here we go. If the language provided in many course books is conventional rather than real life, how can samples of use that are as natural as possible be provided? There you go. So how can you possibly relate the textbooks or the resource materials that you'll be using, right, to be more authentic, right, to be more natural, so that the students can relate into it. Also, in course books are frequently predictable in format and in content. How can the material be made more lively? So is the materials, like, again, is the material flexible enough to make it more motivating, interesting, right? Can you make it enthusiastic or something? So these are the things that you need to consider whenever, for example, you're selecting your material. Okay, let's proceed. So let's talk about the similarities and difference of selection of materials and evaluation of materials. Somehow they share the same thing, but they have their differences as well. So let's talk about it. So first thing, evaluation, like selection, is a matter of judging the fitness of something for a particular purpose. However, while it is true that the selection of materials inevitably involves or subsumes a process of evaluation, evaluation can be undertaken for a variety of purposes and carried out in a varied way of ways. In the selection of materials, on the other hand, what assumes primarily importance is the analysis of the learner needs and interests and how these are addressed. Consequently, in the selection of materials, usually it is the most appropriate rather than the best that wins. So what's the difference? Well, this evaluation and selection really, uh, their similarity is judging really if a material really fits to the needs and interests of the students. But what's make it different is this. So evaluation tries to find out the best materials, right? While selection of materials tries to find out which one is more appropriate to the learning or to the teaching learning process. Also, if you think about it, um, when we say evaluation, according to here, meaning it actually gives or it can be used into a variety of purposes that can be carried out in different ways. Evaluation of materials can be done not just at the very beginning of the or before the school or the learning process, but also it can be done during the learning process already, during the school year. So evaluation can be done during the school year and after the school year as well. On the other hand, selection of materials is not. Selection of materials really happens before the school or the learn or the teaching learning process begins, right? Let's see here. Oh, there you go. So this is what I'm talking about. So additionally, since the selection of materials necessarily takes a place before classroom use, typically it is concerned or its concern is when or with what brand and Candle and brand describes as TAS as work plans, meaning the analysis of materials as they are in the state of pre-use. So you're analyzing materials, right, as they are based or uh, in the time wherein you're not still using it really in the teaching learning process, right? You're choosing the appropriate one based on your idea and experiences. But really, in terms of evaluating it, it will only happen once use it in the teaching learning process. So in the selection of materials, it really happens before, right? Before the start of the learning process or the of your discussion or the school year. This is distinct from evaluation of materials in action, with what actually happens in a classroom when materials are in use, or in what in Brent's terminology would be task and process. When you say task and process, on the other hand, this means that it is now in the evaluation part, wherein you're evaluating materials in a way or by simply on how it was being used and its effectiveness, right? Its effectiveness in the teaching learning process. And then also evaluation takes place when tasks as outcomes, meaning the point when teachers and the learners bring their own personal contributions, meaning right now the teachers and the students experience already in the material and they're giving now their feedback, right, their idea about it. So selection of materials focuses on before, right, before it is being used, so tasks as work plans. Now, thus, while the evaluation of materials would involve assessing how effective and useful the materials are found to be in an actual use by a specific group of teachers and students, or how effective they may have been in promoting learning, selection of material is concerned with the potential that a set of materials may have in effectively and efficiently supporting learning as a frame for learning and teaching opportunities. If you'll think about it, so support or selection of materials really focus on the potential of the material, while evaluation focuses on really targeting the material based on how it is being used in the teaching learning process, if it is really effective or not. And again, this is the reference that I have that I use. So thank you again. I hope you understand my discussion. Um, Keep safe, everyone. God bless us all.